the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, did host a press conference in Abuja today. He addressed a potpourri of national issues, including the importance of the economy, security, and governance, and he was addressing certain things straight to the president. During that engagement, Mr. Obi says there is no merger yet between the Labour Party and the PDP and the NNPP or any other political party. That's as a build-up to the 2027 election. He rallied all Nigerians and lovers of the country in the political space to come together in 2027 so that the APC can be defeated, which he accused of mismanaging the country's resources, if you will, while advising the president to visit schools, hospitals, and more of the 36 states this year for an on-the-spot assessment of the situation in the country. He also had described the security situation in the country as unfortunate, maintaining that Nigerians are dying needlessly due to banditry, terrorism, and kidnapping for ransom. Okay, so those are the big stories we're tracking for you as far as the politics is concerned. So let's get straight to our conversation. And my guest is going to piggyback in a couple of them. I'm being joined in the program right here in our Lagos studios by the governorship candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 governorship election in Lagos State, Mr. Rhodes-Vivour. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Happy New Year, I must say.
Same to you, same to you.
Where do we start from? So let's begin with the obvious. Some of the things that you've seen. We're going to do two things, basically looking at things from the national as well as the state level. But let's begin with some of the remarks of the president. The president has spoken just yesterday, and it's that message of optimism again. He said Nigerians should be optimistic, but it's being very consistent with his position. I've always told my guests this. He's not changing his position. He's not removing PMS subsidy. He's not subsidizing FX. He says this is the right way to go as far as he's concerned for a better future. But what is in reading that statement, if you had opportunity to look at that statement, what is your takeaway and what do you look at?
So for me, I would be able to take what the president is saying if he was also experiencing Nigeria for what it is to the common man today. You have hardworking Nigerians, hardworking market women, hardworking people all over the country that are experiencing extreme levels of hardship. Meanwhile, you're seeing in a budget where there is almost 22 billion budgeted to maintain the State House, another 4.6 billion budgeted to buy new bulletproof vehicles. So you literally see a political class that's being pampered with the commonwealth of our country. Meanwhile, the people are experiencing unprecedented hardship. Today, over 70% of people's income is spent on transportation and food. They've not even started to think about how they're going to be able to afford accommodation. So we have a situation where there's a culture of wastefulness, extravagance that does not reflect the dire economic situation that the same president is pushing out that needs to be reformed. Reformation should be in the interest of the people. At the moment, the only people that seem to be benefiting from these reforms are maybe the bankers because of the FX windfalls, or the people in government and the president's friends. How many Nigerians can say that they are benefiting from any reform right now, or can say that the quality of life has increased in the last couple of years?
He's saying that this is a temporary pain for
then he should also feel the pain. The political elite should also feel the pain, and we should see it in their budgeting. There should be no reason why 22 billion is being budgeted to maintain the State House. There's no reason why they should still be buying cars, right? There are other governments around the world that politicians and people in power are using their own personal cars. What car does the president want to buy today that he does not already have? Right? So if you are saying that we are going through pains, we want to see the political class also reflect that they too they are going through pains. Not driving the latest cars, spending huge amounts of money. I mean, the other day we were reading about how 200 million was budgeted in a day to be spent in Lagos. So at national and state level, right? And then you also understand the level of insecurity that we currently are facing. A report came out where where it was said that almost 2.2 trillion was used in settling ransoms last year, right? This is the state of play.
So the argument they make in counter argument when these things are pushed to them, they said, look, For instance, the president has said, when they asked him in that media chat, I'm sure you would have watched it, the size of your cabinet is too large. Why don't you cut it down? He said, well, I need these guys to do the job I want them to do. If you have anyone that you feel is not doing enough, state their names. The journalists, perhaps out of
Well, that's an indictment on the journalists.
Why?
Because a country where the national grid has crashed how many times, you cannot mention the Minister of Power. The situation of housing in this country, you cannot mention the minister, person in charge of housing, right? I mean, you had Betty Edu situation. You have so many people. Even the chief of staff has been indicted in one way, shape, or form.
You think it was a moment of just courtesy, just allow him? He's supposed to know who is not working. Or it's just the fact that journalists are telling him that we can't tell you what your job is. You should have known that something is wrong. Should we tell you who you should fire?
I think the situation that we have currently in Nigeria, especially, and it continues from President Buhari, is that we've not really had a president that is communicating and carrying people along. So everybody just seems to be so happy that president is addressing Nigerians. So they are not really drilling down and digging into the questions that should really be asked. Because that's a nonsensical question. Our currency has lost over 50% of its value. There's no figure points there, right? Our national grid it's like epileptic. It keeps collapsing. There's no figure point there. So what are we saying? You know, it was unfortunate, but I hope that the journalists...
I was going to somewhere with that.
Go ahead.
They tout FX reserve, they tout NEL fund, a couple of other things they've touted as trade surplus as well. They've touted some of these things. So they say the argument, playing the devil's advocate for them so you can respond from your own angle, is the fact that they're saying that the bigger macroeconomic indicators has to stabilize at certain level before it can get to the micro level, and that will take a bit of time, that they've just been here for 18 months.
So what was their plan? What was their plan to cushion the hardship and effects that the everyday Nigerian will face, right? You can have a macroeconomic plan. If you are thinking that way, then you should also understand the shock is going to do on the ground. So what do you put in place? There was a point where they said we're transferring monies to people, monies that we could not account for, monies we could not trace, huge amounts of monies that just apparently went to the system and disappeared without any accountability for it, right? There was a point where they were sharing food, and then there were stampedes at customs. I mean, you saw the amount of stampedes that happened in this Ulysses season. Never in my adult years have I seen Nigerians so desperate to get food. You say a place is going to be open at 9 a.m., at 3 a.m., people are already queuing for food. That shows the hardship Nigerians are facing. And then what are the plans you've put into our agriculture? How are you securing our farms? Most of our farmers now are in IDP camps.
Okay, I know you wanted to throw that indictment on me and my colleagues, but
No.
let me throw it back to you guys.
All right.
The Labour Party, the PDP, they've all been enmeshed in leadership tussle. I think it's even worse with the Labour Party. These are the things that we expect parties like yours to be doing, giving that pushback that we can build on, because there are layers to holding account to
100%.
There is a political party. There is a civil society organization. There is the media. All of these.
And they are the members of the assembly.
So, is this not an indictment on, let me stay with your party, the Labour Party, of its inability to put its house together to be able to give a formidable opposition? In fact, you're losing members at the end of the day. So let's talk about opposition parties.
Yes. So the way I see it, two ways. One, even siblings have disagreements. The important thing is that they are civil about how they solve these problems. There's a current situation where they're in court and they are following that process. Nobody is sending thugs to destroy the secretariat or anything like that. There's a civil way that they're dealing with that. But at the same time, I agree with you. I believe that this country deserves a vibrant opposition. And I'm very grateful for His Excellency Peter Obi, who has not gone quiet after the election. You see him constantly out there, speaking truth to power, doing his best to lift people up in his capacity that he can. I'm also very disappointed with the National Assembly, especially members of the opposition, right? We saw what happened with a Bukola Saraki Senate. Right? I'm not saying he's perfect, but that Senate held the government accountable, right? There was some pushback. They did what a Senate is supposed to do. That we don't see that here. And that includes the Labour Party members that are
saying
there.
That this National Assembly is rubber stamp?
Certainly. That goes without saying. I don't need to say it. Ask any Nigerian what they think. Ask any Nigerian what they think about the assembly. Ask any Nigerian what they think about judiciary. There's a full-on state capture that has happened now, right? That a president will come into the Senate where everybody that's supposed to be there is representing Nigerians and they are singing his campaign song. That was a very, very low point in our country. And I don't think we've actually understood that moment. We have not understood that moment. That's not how it's supposed to be, right? Go back to the Greeks, go back to the histories, right? Where the Senate stands and then whether it's Julius Caesar that comes to address them, right? They have a responsibility to hold that person that has the ultimate power to check. So yes, I do agree with you. It's not only the journalists that
Well, we're doing our job.
You're doing your best.
Yeah, you're doing
I
our
also
job.
feel that the members of the opposition, PDP and Labour Party, in the House of Representatives and the Senate must rise up to the challenge.
Let's come to Lagos State, where you wanted to be governor. It was a very, very intense moment in 2023, but you came second in that election. And how much of check have you been doing to this government? Peter Obi may be doing at the national level. I'm going to throw figures at you from what the Lagos State government is doing. But what, in your view, is happening in Lagos State? And are you comfortable?
I'm not comfortable at all. I mean, all of last year, we've been doing our best to bring to light the gross flagrant use of the Commonwealth of Lagos. We brought to light how they were budgeting billions for fans. We brought to light the fact that 200 million was in their documentation for someone who's private legal expenses. We brought to light the amount of money that's being spent on consultants relative to what can be spent. I mean, they're spending billions to hire consultants to consult on bus lanes and bus routes when they can do it for so much less. They can do it in partnership with the state universities. They can do it in partnership with state schools and work it out. I mean, I went to MIT. When the government wants to do something, they come to us and we consult with them. And this is not something that they're necessarily paying the school for. But you have brilliant minds in our schools that can do these things, right? So there's so much, there are ways where you can cut down your costs and still get quality, right? So that's not seen. Also, the government is still running a very opaque system in terms of its accounting, its finances. It takes a lot to even just be able to get line by line items or costings for what things actually cost and how they are running the government in Lagos State. So it's very, very uncomfortable because, I mean, when you look at the blue line, the things that they take pride in, the blue line, the red line, look at how long it took for it to be delivered, look at how much it costs per kilometer, relative to how much they said it would cost or relative to how much it costs in other countries like Ethiopia or Kenya. You see that we are not getting the best deal. Lagosians are not getting the best deal.
So in your view, if you want to point out I don't want to go too far, two things that Sanwo-Olu is failing to do and is failing very strongly at it, what would they be?
Well, first, I'll start with the inner roads for local governments. Extremely poor. Extremely, extremely poor. You go into parts of Lagos. Lagos is not just Lekki to Ikeja. Go into Alimosho, go into Jeremy Felodun, go into Ojo. It's like we're in the rural areas. It's like we're in the village. It's nothing like Lagos, right? Or nothing like what Lagos is supposed to be. Also, two things is a bit limiting, right?
Okay,
I'll say. So the inner roads. We'll talk about our education system, the quality of our schools, the schools that are available for children in this place. They're big problem. And also, they're not distributed evenly. You find schools are concentrated in places, right? The idea of development in the state is to allow for each local government, each local government to be as independent as possible. So all your services, your education, your healthcare, all your services are within your local government. No need to go out for it, right? So you find there are several communities that don't have access to schools, good schools, private, public schools. We're not even talking about private schools, public schools in their local government. So I've talked about education, healthcare. Let's put education and healthcare because it's very similar sort of scenario that they're facing. And then still waste management. Our waste management is directly tied to the flooding, which is directly tied to why they're demolishing buildings, which is directly tied to pollution in the state.
Let's talk about, because you have an expertise in that area, let's talk about these two issues that if you were governor, for instance, what would you have done differently? Because you wanted governor someone lose job as in last election. I'm going to ask you whether you want that job still in 2027. Okay.
Well, it won't be his job to give.
The people will give whoever they want to give the job. But I'm just asking whether you want to be the next governor or you're interested. But I'll come to that in a moment. I'm saying that traffic, flooding, there's no governor that's been able to resolve this issue. If you were to give counsel or you were to be in charge, what would you have done differently?
So in relation to traffic, we need to create, and not just pay lip service to it, a multimodal city, right? They've made efforts with water transportation. There's a lot of talk about it, but there's a normalization that has to happen. And these things are done by actually creating different nodes that allow for this to be normalized, whether it's a small market on the water on your way, right? So you go from A to B, you can stop here, you can buy things here and continue going. Better quality jetties. Look at the jetties in Ikorodu, right? They look like they're about to fall off. So people that are going on there, there's always a question of safety. So so that's why the adaptation or adoption of that means of transport is low. Secondly, while we talk about transport, the cost of transportation, look at the red line that you've done, blue line. How many people can actually afford to use this mode of transportation? There needs to be a subsidy on it, especially for the older people in our population, the retirees, the pensioners. There needs to be a subsidy for them, right? Even the students, there needs to be a subsidy for them so that more people use this. That then decongest our roads, which then allows for more efficient movement on the roads, right? So those are some things. And then the inner roads. Local governments should be empowered to actually deliver on the inner roads, which is their actual mandate, right? So those things, and then not tying the development of our train systems to the purse string of the state. Open it up to the private sector. Allow for it to be transparent and open. Nobody needs to be giving kickbacks, or nobody needs to know this particular person.
Are they giving kickbacks?
Oh, certainly. I know several businessmen that have said they've actually got consortiums and put money together to be able to come in and deliver on these railroads. But they always had these huge demands put on them, which is why they stepped out. So the government needs to become a platform government where you're creating platforms for private sector, private equity to be able to come in and deliver. And your job is to ensure that Lagosians are getting it at the best possible price. That's your function. It should not be about, oh, you control it, you put your money in it. No. Create a transparent system for business to come in, and you can mediate the cost that it will be paid for the average Lagosian.
You know, if Governor Sanwo-Olu was seated here and I was asking him some questions, one of the things I suppose he would say is that he's been able to grow the IGR from budget analysis that I saw the last time. I think the IGR as 2023, when the year ended, came to almost about 800 billion. That is record. So that's like the IGR of almost 20-something states. In dollar
terms, because you see, we have this issue now in Nigeria. We have the president will tell you he's giving the governors this huge amount of money, but in dollar terms, it's still pretty much the same. You know, the cost of inflation. I mean, how much were you buying petrol?
It's a naira economy.
It's a naira economy, but everything around us in naira has gone up. So when we are talking about numbers, we have to put it in context. The money it costs for me to fill my tank. If I think about it 6 years ago, someone told me that, I'll be screaming, right? Well, there was a time where you go to 40,000 naira, with 40,000 naira to a petrol station, you're a big man. Today, you can barely do anything at a petrol station or fill a tank without 150,000, 120,000. So when we are talking about these numbers, we have to put it in this context of the fact that our currency has lost 50% of its value.
The reason I say that is...
because over 700 companies have shut down.
Is the argument over the ability to be able to optimize, to generate revenue for the state to be able to carry out its responsibility. Don't you think that's a plus for them? 800 billion?
It's always good to be able to raise money. It's always good. The question is, what are you doing with it? Because this same state that's raising money is in so much debt.
Yeah, about 2.7 trillion.
Yes, so what are they doing with that money? This aside from FACO, what are they doing with that money? All this money that they are raising from taxpayers, from pay, because there's no other state like Lagos. This money that they're generating, they're not getting it from the air or from the ground. It's from hard-working Lagosians. So the social contract between the government and the Lagosians must be at an all-time high. So what are they doing with all that money? Why are they in so much debt? Why is so much of his money going to be servicing debt? Right? So these are the questions. It's not just enough. Lagos State since the 1700s has been generating huge amounts of money. Go and ask Oba Adeli, ask Oba Kusoko, all of them. Lagos State has been at the forefront of, we have been a trading coast for the last 500 years. So money has always flowed in Lagos State. It's not about that. It's about how is this money impacting the lives of the everyday Lagosian.
So as we're going to wind down, let's look at the performance of the Sanwo-Olu administration. In your view, in your rating, by your own assessment, what will it be?
See, I do not believe that any governor that emerges from the APC is given the free rein to actually embody or manifest a vision. You look at Governor Ambode. Governor Ambode, I will say he did decently well. I saw his vision for the Onikon area in terms of creating an art district. I saw a wholesome perspective on Lagos State, right? But you see what happened to him, right? Because apparently he questioned the vision of the APC. I don't see anything broadly innovative that Governor Sanwo-Olu has done. Most Lagosians will tell you that housing is still a major problem in our state. They're talking about doing developments on some islands, so you already know that these developments is not going to be affordable, right? People will still tell you we are being flooded. Flooding is happening. They're demolishing people's houses while our canals are overgrown with weeds. There's not been any steady system that allows for maintenance of our canalways that already exist. There's still an opaque system of governance, which is the main thing I campaigned about, opening up the accounts of Lagos State. So it has a line-by-line item that is easily accessible to Nigerians, and that kind of level of transparency takes on a life of its own. So even you as governor cannot steal.
The reason I'm asking you these questions is because it's important that those of you in the opposition hold the government to account.
Oh, certainly, and we have been doing that.
So would you have done a better job than Governor Sanwo-Olu?
Certainly, because from day one, I would have opened up the accounts of Lagos State and then benchmark our projects against World Bank benchmarks. So you will not be reading in a budget that a Toyota Camry is costing 200 and something million when you know that on the market is less than 50, 60 million, right? So when you see a line item, it's benchmarked against what you can get on the market. Because what is the government supposed to be doing? It's supposed to be using the economy of scale to get the best deal for Lagosians and maximize its commonwealth. And that's the objective. But unfortunately, that's not the case here. You see, the commonwealth is just used to propagate and increase the wealth of the political elite, as opposed to getting the best deal for the most possible people in the fastest possible time, and for Lagosians to enjoy a better quality of life.
As we wind down, two quick questions. Are you running again?
By God's grace, yes.
On the platform of?
Well, you heard what my leader said. We're working. You're
not sure running under the platform of the Labour Party?
See, for me, I believe that if all parties do not come together, it's going to be a waste of time running in 2027. Because there's a full state capture that has happened in this country now. So we cannot afford for the opposition to be separate, right? So for now, my job is to ensure that I have a strong party, which is Labour Party, and to ensure that there are bridges that are being built all across the country and all across the state.
So finally, are you ready to help build your party to being an institution?
Certainly.
Because the problem we have seen with the Labour Party as a political journalist is the fact that Labour Party seems to look like a personality party than an institution. Is that something you guys agree with?
No.
Even in Lagos State, it's just about you we know the most. At the national level, it's a tussle between Peter Obi, Alex Oti, and somewhere.
We have a state chairman that's fantastic. Our state chairman is an icon in herself. And there is a lot of work to come together and build a solid structure. Okay. And so take that from me. And we're working very diligently to do that. But we still have a lot of work to do. And by God's grace, this year we will do that.
Okay, we're here to watch and report all you're doing. That's our responsibility. By the way, Rhodes-Vivour is the 2023 Labour Party governorship candidate in Lagos State. And he says he's going to run again, though we don't know what party he's going to run under. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.